So here we are at the Goodwood circuit for what is arguably the most important vintage car racing event in the world.
You walk in and it's like magic. It's like you've been transformed back in time.
Just more than anything, just sort of experiencing and feeling that sort of elegance that perhaps we miss in our day-to-day life at the moment.
You know, the event is really made by the fact that everyone is willing to dress up, everyone brings their cars and enjoys it and gets involved. I mean, if people didn't want to take part, none of it would work really.
It's incredible. It's like every single post-World War car there is here at Goodwood. Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, and for years now, I've been exploring the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. This journey has taken me from some of the world's most highly regarded bespoke tailoring houses, all the way to a proper shooting estate in Scotland. I've come to believe that nobody does tradition better than the British, from dressing in the proper attire for a given occasion through the liturgy of the ceremonial. There is always an etiquette at its core. The traditions of dressing properly, the traditions of the country pursuits, the traditions of British ceremony. But in today's video, we explore what could be one of the most exciting of the British traditions, racing. I've been invited by my good friend James to join him as he prepares to race his 1959 Tojero in the Goodwood Revival, arguably the world's most renowned vintage racing event. So strap in and enjoy as we experience Britain's golden era of racing. Anyone know where the assembly area is?
Assembly area. We're fresh in from Monaco.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I think it's past the driver's club, and you take a right, then you take a left, and then you take another right, and then I think you'll be there.
Directions.
It's
very good.
It was a bit hazy last night. I came in from last night.
Thank you. So here we are at day 2 of the Goodwood Revival. As you can hear, we're already off to a fast start with cars qualifying for tomorrow's race. We're gonna go check in with James Cottingham, who's competing in his Tojero in the Sussex Cup. He's lining up right behind us for his qualifying round. So here we are, day 2. You're about to go out in the Tojero for your qualifier. So tell me kind of where does this fit into in the weekend?
So for each race, we've got to qualify once. It's a 20-minute session where everyone gets to go out and do the fastest time they can, and then that sets the grid position for the race.
For the race tomorrow.
You know, obviously, if you qualify in the top 3, you're on the front row. If you're P5, you're on the second row on the right, on the outside of the track. And it's just an opportunity to just settle into the car. It's the first time I would have driven it here since last year.
Really?
And go around, build up to it, and try and put in the quickest time I can, which hopefully will get us up the sharp end of the grid. Yeah.
What's interesting, I mean, this is of course all cars that would historically have been racing together. So how do you feel about the Tojero ranked up against the rest of the lineup here?
So the race is for pre-1960 50 sports cars.
Okay.
And the Tojero is 1959, so it's kind of as late as it got before they're no longer eligible. So from the offset, it stands a really good chance. The cars to look out for are the other listers. So the listers are very similar. They have the same drivetrain, just different chassis. And the Lotus 15s, which are only 2 litre, but they're very, very lightweight, very nimble. So they've got great power to weight ratio, and they're really quick through the turns. So you'll see those cars being up the sharp end as well.
So what is it about the Goodwood circuit that is special for these cars?
Well, it's unchanged. So it is absolutely as it was in the 60s when the circuit closed. And it's a very high-speed circuit, very little runoff. You've got to, make sure you really don't want to be coming off the circuit because the consequences are quite severe. But in terms of speed, it's a high-speed circuit. It's very technical because there's a lot of fast-flowing corners that speed through one will absolutely affect the next turn. So it's a very technical circuit, and it's daunting. So it often takes people a long time to get their head around it and get used to it and comfortable. But I've done a few laps here, so I still go out with a bit of trepidation. I'm always a bit nervous about it because it's a place that has a reputation. But when you get a good lap, it's super satisfying.
Last weekend you were racing a modern CLK GT car, and then here you are today in the equivalent, but of a totally bygone era. How is it different?
I think if I was jumping from one car to the other on the same day, it'd be really difficult. But when you're so used to these cars, you just sort of almost unplug yourself from the other one and plug yourself into this one, and it naturally comes back. You remember what the gears are, you remember the grip levels, you remember the braking levels. So, it's quite easy weekend to weekend, but if it was the same day, I think I'd find it really difficult.
Is one more difficult than the other, or are they both difficult for different reasons?
Completely different techniques, completely different philosophies, just very different. The GT3 car is high downforce, it's late on the brakes, it's all about braking to corner apex to getting on the throttle, whereas this is more about carrying the speed and more about being smooth and more about
the finesse.
The finesse, exactly. Having that right level of slip, having that right level of opposite lock as opposed to going in a straight line when you're through the corners. And just getting a fast, smooth lap together. But obviously these cars, you've got to look after the cars a bit more because you can break them very easily. Modern cars, it's not such an issue.
Well, good luck, James. We look forward to watching the qualifier.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
And we'll see you whenever you come out.
Pleasure.
Thank you. With qualifying over, the cars began to pull into the assembly area, lining up in order of their established grid position for the big race. And immediately after that, the drivers and mechanics would embark upon their all-important postmortems. As James pulled into the assembly area, the enormity of the task ahead was becoming clear. Fourth position was not quite the start he had been hoping for. So how was it, James?
Exciting. Yeah, certainly wakes you up in the morning. Yeah, it's a busy track. There's a lot of cars on track, so I was first in the assembly area trying to get a clear lap, but actually on my first flying lap, I caught some of the back markers, but just kept pushing. Had an early pole, I saw, but finished up P4. So with P4, there's just a tenth of a second between the top four, and yeah, it's going to make for a great race. Obviously, I'd love to be on the front row of the grid so I can have that, best start as possible, but we'll see what happens. And
1/10 of a second, though.
Yeah, I know, it's super close.
I mean, it really speaks to the caliber of driver that we have. I mean, this isn't a professional race class. I mean, everyone's an amateur enthusiasts, but really pushing these high level. Nines.
It is high level, yeah, and everyone here is, at the front of the grid is of a similar standard, and it's great that we've got a Ferrari on pole, we've got 2 Lotuses on the front row, and then the Tojero is P4. Yeah. So, yeah, looking forward to the race tomorrow night.
DK representing well. We're looking forward to tomorrow.
Cheers,
Thank you. Yeah. The spectacle of seeing these cars in action was incredible. But the more I saw, the more I wondered just what it took to get behind the wheel of one of these amazing cars and race it to its limits. There's no question that at this level, these drivers could be racing anything. So the question remains, why is it that they choose these incredible vintage race cars, and why the Goodwood Revival? Joe, nice to see you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Appreciate you taking some time to speak to us about this beautiful car. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, it's a 1965 Ferrari 1512, 1.5 liter Grand Prix car.
How long have you been driving?
This particular car we drove first in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a while now.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long development, trying to get the car more reliable and a little quicker.
So I imagine that, at this level, you could be racing anything. You could be racing modern cars, you could have your pick of kind of the vintage. What is it about the Goodwood Revival, and what is it about racing vintage automobiles that you find so exciting?
So we do quite a bit of modern racing to stay sharp for the vintage racing. But the vintage race is completely different. To me, it's the ultimate enjoyment of vehicle, team, camaraderie, the ambiance of events like this, and it's just it's the whole package of what you like to do as a racer.
Yeah, but what was different about that era of racing from the modern era? Because back in the 50s and 60s, I mean, you still had kind of an enthusiast gentleman class of racers, whereas today, to be competitive at that level, it's fully professional.
Yeah, it is. I think you said it, the gentleman aspect of it. It's also the corporate involvement of today's racing versus what it was back then. It was smaller teams. It was camaraderie with drivers. It was just a different feel. I think it was also the risk factor. You were out there with people that they all knew they were putting their life on the line in these very dangerous cars. So I think there was a little more respect amongst the drivers, and not having that big corporate involvement really helped in bringing the community together. And so you get that sense in historic racing today.
Yeah. Whenever you're here at the Goodwood Revival, of course, which is so much more than just the cars, I mean, it really is trying to recreate the entire ambiance of that bygone era. Do you feel like you're reliving that at all?
Absolutely, yeah. Goodwood does it in a special way, unlike anywhere in the world. When you come here, as soon as you go through the gates, you just feel like you're in the right period. The cars fit, the dress, just all the people that are employed by the Goodwood. It's amazing that they can do to make your sense of being in period, and with the air shows and the old Spitfires, and it just gives you such a good sense. And everyone that comes here is enthusiastic and involved with the whole event. They play the part, even whether or not they're young children or drivers or fans. Everyone likes to dress the part. It's great. It's just
what's striking to me is that, of course, you've got the people that are here for the racing. But there's just as many people that are here just for kind of the vintage, vibe.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really a special event, and you just, like you said, you get that vibe as soon as you walk in, and it stays with you through the whole weekend.
Yeah,
it's amazing when you first get back on the highway to go to your hotel, and you're like, wow, these old, all these new cars in the way. It's great. It's completely.
What's it like driving this? I mean, this. It's got to be a difficult vehicle to drive, I would imagine.
It is. It's gotten better over the years. It's a bit heavy for the class, but it's got horsepower, but it's a bit tail heavy. It's really tight for a driver. We had to take the fuel cell out, and John Surtees and Bandini drove it in period, and they were very small. So when we removed the fuel cell from the seat, we were able to put the driver further back, and I can sort of squeeze in there. There's not a lot of space to maneuver.
Yeah.
But it's a bit long-legged, I would say.
Yeah.
It's not a real nimble car. Mm-hmm. But here at Goodwood, it seems to go well. There's a lot of straightaways.
Which is a fast track.
Yeah. We can top out usually at the higher end of the field for top speed.
Yeah. So what is the top speed of a vehicle like this?
Here we top out about 145 miles an hour.
So it's still really fast.
Yeah, it's pretty fast. 1.5 liter too.
Yeah.
So it's.
So what is the span of years represented by the Glover Trophy?
Well, so the Glover Trophy covers from 1960 to 1965, 1.5 liter.
Yeah. So that's 5 years, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that some of the other people have been talking to me about is how, in this era, the golden era of kind of racing, the automotive development from year to year could be quite staggering.
Yeah, and in that period there were very few rules, so it was just a matter of displacement. Today, you can't really give the engineers full rein because they would just build something drivers couldn't drive. So at that point, it's just the engineers had full rein to whatever they can think of to make the cars go faster. They had liberty to do. But from 60 to 65 was a huge development.
Yeah.
Right. They switched from the 2.5 liters that were early front engine cars, and then they came out with the rear engine cars. And it just sort of changed the whole game.
Yeah.
So it was constant development, year to year, even the 12 versus the 8. If you look side by side, we did festival speed here, and we had both cars side by side, the championship Surtees car and this car. And aside from the monocoque, quite a bit was different from year to year. So it was interesting to see. But you go back, some of the cars in the class from 61, 62, completely different.
Yeah.
Just the look, everything, suspension design. This is the monocoque. It's the first Ferrari monocoque ever made.
Yeah. Do you find that development kind of year over year made this era more exciting?
Yeah, it was great to see what the engineers could do within a short period of time, and with the funding, some of the smaller teams were able to do things that were unimaginable today.
Yeah.
To automatically come up with an idea that would make them competitive with the bigger teams. Mm-hmm. And it's unlike today. That's part of the mystique of the historic racing.
Yeah.
Being able to get those cars to work well year to year was just a matter of who came up with a better solution at that time.
And it was less driven by budgets. I mean, you speak of the corporate involvement in today's modern racing. I mean, back in this era, it really was about just the raw engineering creativity of the team.
Exactly. It was just a matter of a group of guys that got together, starting, these is where they all started, Cooper, Lotus. These are the very early days. They were nothing like you would see today. There's more people, I think, in 10 times as many people in the media departments than there would in the whole
team.
The whole team.
Yeah. And at this era, I mean, you still had the GTs where people were driving to the track.
Yeah, so if you look at the 65, you look around here with the Ferrari display, 75th anniversary in 1965, you had 62, that same era of the 1.5 liters, you had the GTOs, the short wheelbases, they were finishing off with the TRs. So it was just, I mean, if you look at the grid in the TT, representing that era, it's amazing to see what's out there, the E-types and the Cobras and the Ferraris, and it's just a great period of time. And I think Goodwood does especially here at Goodwood, it did a special job, showing that off.
Yeah. Do you consider this the golden era of racing?
I do.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. It changed as soon as you start seeing wings.
Yeah, that's right.
Went to 3 liter in the Formula 1 class. As soon as they went to the wings and big fat tires, and it did change. But I think there was a little bit of a transition there where it was still considered a golden era. Yeah. But I think once they hit the 70s, it kind of went away a bit. So I think so.
Yeah. So Joe, when are you racing?
Our race is at 12:30 this afternoon. Yeah, it's shortly. A few hours.
Yeah. Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
And,
appreciate it.
Thank you for taking some time with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Despite being rooted in the golden era of racing, the festival continues to attract some of the most elite contemporary drivers from all around the world. Goodwood has a long and distinguished history featuring many of the world's greatest drivers from each era, and this weekend's driver lineup was no exception, with champions from Formula One, IndyCar, and Le Mans all competing together. I'm here with Harry Newey, son of Adrian Newey, of course famous for his automobile designs, racing this weekend. Harry, hey, thank you for taking a little bit of time with us.
No, thank you for having me.
So you're racing this beautiful vintage Jaguar, and I just have to know, I mean, as someone that could be driving anything, what is it like driving something that comes from the golden era of racing?
Well, I think firstly what's really special with this car and this event for me is that I grew up coming here and watching my dad race in the TT in this car. I remember when he won it with Martin, he won it with Bobby, and I was only a small boy, and then that was part of what made me want to go racing. And to be here now in the same event in the same car, I don't know, 15 years later, is pretty special. And then to drive them, I don't really know the track, so I got out for a few laps yesterday, and then Jensen took over and did a fantastic job, put it second, so he did his thing, but I did a couple of laps, and it was just wild. They are so fast around here for what the track presents. The track's narrow, it's bumpy, you're never straight, you're never not working. And it's just so involving, so engaging, and that's what's so special about them. It's like the cars are just designed for this type of track, and obviously today with all the safety and everything and the way tracks have moved on, we've kept this haven of how tracks used to be, and it's just perfectly matched to these cars.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting point because this track is unchanged since the days whenever this would have been running as a brand new vehicle.
Exactly.
And so this car is really experiencing this track as it was meant to.
And you bring them to a Silverstone these days and they're so wide, there's so much runoff, there's big curves, there's this, that, they don't feel the same. You bring them here where it's bumpy, the thing's moving around, it's narrow, it's so well molded and it's just amazing, and you have to work your arse off to make the thing, to keep the thing in a straight line, and it's just fantastic.
Do you find that these older vehicles are more approachable as a driver than the newer ones?
I think they are. I mean, what I find is when I step in, it's out of my comfort zone because the car's moving around so much, which I'm not used to. But you see some of the gentlemen and they're so fast in these because that's what they've driven. So what's quite nice is it really brings the pros and the gentlemen much closer. If you came here in a high downforce car and you've got ex-F1 drivers and current F1 drivers driving, they're going to be absolutely miles away. It won't even be the same race as some of the guys driving, but there's a bit more parity. It's different for everyone. Everyone's sliding around, everyone's trying new things, and that's also really cool.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite things about racing this car?
So far, I've only done 2 laps in it around here, so I'm a bit off, and I've never raced it before, so I can't say. But I was lucky; I got 2 test days in at Donington, and that was fantastic. We're just developing the car and getting there, and I think, just on the 2 laps I did, just the fact that you never stop working, you never get a break, and also I've got to engage my brain and learn something completely different, completely new. It's almost like a new discipline.
Yeah. Many refer to this as kind of the golden era of racing.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
just think the freedom that everyone had. You know, you look down the grid, all the cars are different. They've got different engines, different this, different that. The rule book was open for engineers. They could really work on developing, and the development was so quick. For drivers, it was about the actual driving itself, having fun, you know, playing with the crowd, being around, being a people person. Nowadays, there's just so much engineering that goes into them. Everything's so serious that professional drivers just have to be so concentrated. They almost can't have fun, whereas you come here, and as it was back in the day, and we've still got that, the whole thing is just about having fun and going racing because people love racing.
Yeah. Well, you think you'll have loads of fun today?
I'm positive we'll have loads of fun today. There's no doubts about that.
Well, best of luck, Harry. We
Thank
look
you
forward
very
to
much.
seeing you out there on the track.
Thank you. Thank you.
Harry is driving the RAC TT Celebration Race. This is a race of huge importance, not least because of its historical relevance to the original RAC TT that took place at the motor circuit during the late 1950s and early 1960s. For this race, the driving is done in pairs, and Harry's driving partner is none other than 2009 Formula One World Champion Jensen Button. So to contrast the gentleman class of driver, here we have a true professional. Jensen Button, of course, famous Formula One driver. Hey, Jensen, thank you so much for taking some time with us.
No worries.
And I have to know, I mean, as a Formula One kind of professional driver, how are these incredible vintage automobiles different, and what's it like out there on the track?
Oh, well, it's the complete opposite. So in Formula One, you have massive amounts of downforce. Everything is there. You know, it's milliseconds to really perfect everything. You know, weight and everything. It's so key. With these, they're monsters around here. No downforce. It's all mechanical grip. Tiny little tires. They're actually used in period, so we have to use the same tires. But no, they're so much fun, especially in the TT. This category is like the one to win. Because you've got the lightweight E-types, you've got the Cobras, you know, you've got the Lister Jagger, which is going to be really quick. You've got Corvette, so it's a real big list of high performance cars that would have raced and looked the same. And in period.
On the same track.
On the same track, and nothing's really changed. It's a little scary, but no, it's amazing. So to have this opportunity for us as drivers, you know, it's very special to see what they drove back in the day. And it attracts people from all over the world, as you know. So there's IndyCar drivers in NASCAR, F1 world champions. There's people that have won Le Mans 9 times, like Tom Christensen. So it really attracts a good crowd. They want to have fun. But we still want to win.
That's right. It's still competitive, even in vehicles of this caliber. Do you find that these vehicles level the playing field? I mean, here you are professional, but there's, you know, amateur enthusiasts here amongst you.
Not really. I mean, some of them are much better cars than others. So, no, there's a lot of money that still gets spent on these cars to develop them as far as they can to the regulations, which is fun, which I like, and I think that's why the teams want to get involved. But yeah, you know, a gentleman driver can buy a car if they have enough money to, and come and race with an F1 world champion or a Le Mans winner. And that's awesome. And to be fair, if they have enough time in the car, they can be reasonably competitive, because this is another world for us. It's so different. You know, in the practice sessions, I haven't driven it for a year, so it's like, it blows your mind how different it is and how much it slides. And so it kind of levels the playing field in terms of it's not something we're used to. No, I do love these cars, and you know, they're pretty light. They're 920 kilos, I think, the weight limit for these. But you know, I also liked when I raced in Formula One. So 2010, when we had V8 engines, or 2004 when we had V10 engines in Formula One. So there are positives to every era of motor racing. The 70s were great for Formula One as well. James Hunt got his first win and only win in a Hesketh, which is a car I love. So no, there's so much to look back at. The problem is that's what we do, we look back, whereas at Goodwood Revival we can actually live in the past, live in period, if you like, and that's what makes it so special.
Excellent. Well, good luck at the race, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers. With the talking done, it was time to get back to business. With their race taking place just before James's race tomorrow, Harry and Jensen now need to focus on a good performance in their own qualifier. Some excellent driving from both Harry and Jensen meant that they would start tomorrow's race in the second position on the grid. Meanwhile, I headed back into the crowd to join Simon Cundy and enjoy the opportunity to meet with several more of the talented drivers, many of whom were also Henry Poole customers.
So Kirby, just this magic moment in time, I'd like to introduce you to two fine drivers, all dressed in a beautiful Poole suits today.
Oh, wow, some of the best dressed drivers here then.
This is Ben Cottingham.
Hi, Ben, Kirby Allison.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Katerina.
Katerina.
I'm Katerina,
Yeah,
lovely to meet you.
pleasure.
So both driving last night, you were both driving your cars. You do many races around the world as well, but obviously, Ben, how was it last night? What were you driving?
1952 Jaguar C-Type that I've had for a long time, over 3
beautiful.
decades. But it was a great evening. I mean, Roy Salvadori once said, "Give me Goodwood on a summer's day, and you can keep the rest." Last night was definitely a case of that.
Yeah, racing into the sunset.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
I
was
can't
fabulous.
imagine a more beautiful race.
It was brilliant. No incidents, just great fun. Perfect way to start the weekend and end the day.
Yeah, but still a competitive race because here you were racing against Katerina.
Kat was she was further up the grid, giving it max. So
Who won?
Katerina.
What were you driving, Katerina? What were you driving?
I was driving in a 1954 Coupe Jaguar T33, and we raced from time to time against each other. And it was just brilliant last night. So, I was in an all-female team.
Okay, wow.
So very unusual or rare sight. And this time we were a little bit quicker than Ben. So, yeah.
So this lovely costume we made for Katerina was actually named after the Bentley Drivers Club. Katerina does drive for Bentley as well.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can see a little bit of interior as a half belt. The interior was quite special. The side pockets.
Yeah.
And we have the straight covered waistcoat in the front here. That gives you that lovely line so you don't get it buckling when you sit in the car. So that's the story behind that one. Ben is very much the worsted tweed, the classic design. We did a little bit special for your Jaguar, if I remember rightly.
Yep.
So that's the actual lining inside here.
There you go. The Leaper and the Jaguar badge.
And then obviously for myself it's the Fraser Nash, so much the same.
Yeah.
But it's very much that sort of authenticity of the traditions of the periods of racing here that gives
So
you
my
that charm.
father raced here in the 60s, and he had a racing suit made very, and it had elasticated ankles, so you could tuck them into the race boot, and he had a flat cut like that. So when you're in the car, as Simon said, you didn't have extra rolls of cloth. And in those days, you didn't need to wear a Nomex or a fireproof overall, and you always had to wear a jacket and tie for drinks with the Duke afterwards. And he figured that was the quickest way of getting out of a racing car and being ready to have a drink.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the Revival in this era in which the Revival represents is that you truly had a gentleman class of driver. I mean, they weren't this professional class that you see today, true enthusiasts. Is that right?
Yeah, they were, but I mean, there was a lot of young guys. They come out of the Second World War. In many respects, it's like the end of the First War. They were adrenaline junkies. They'd been shot at and been through hell and back, and they needed to find something that gave them a buzz. And motor racing post-war was very much that. It was dangerous. It still says it on the ticket when you walk in here. But it pulled in huge crowds, particularly places like Goodwood.
Yeah. Katerina, what do you think, attracts people to the Revival?
I think it's the spirit of the whole event and the whole weekend. It's like the time just stands still. It's a world itself. When you look around, everyone is beautifully dressed. Everyone has the feeling is a part of this event, which is so unique. And I think it is something what draws to people and young and old generations, families. And that's really awesome. Just this combination between motorsport and vintage and class and, of course, beautiful dressed people.
I mean, it is a totally different ambiance here, right? I mean, it's a complete environment. Are there other races that you do?
Not this weekend. This weekend I was only in the 1 hour race last night. Okay. From time to time I race my vintage Bentley. It's a pre-war Bentley, which exactly this suit actually is made for. It's very relaxed weekend for me. What is beautiful, I can enjoy it a little bit.
I do recall you did that ice race in St. Moritz as well. That's a little bit different, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. How does that work?
I was in February. This is a very unusual event. It's a Concorde Elegance on ice on a frozen lake in the middle of St. Moritz in February.
Really?
Yes, and before
that's definitely different.
That's very different. And before that, we drive with spikes without on the lake and show the cars actually in motion. What is beautiful because you see the cars moving. and you have to perform as a driver a little bit to show that you know what are you doing. So yeah, definitely event to go.
Well, that must be where we go next.
I think we must as a destination.
Definitely sure.
But I think the biggest race here this weekend has always been traditionally the Tourist Trophy. And that has a lot of heritage with Goodwood, obviously with the Royal Automobile Club too. And that's obviously part of Ben's world as well.
So Ben, you're chairman of the RAC, or the Royal Automobile Club.
Yep.
And so talk to me about the TT Cup. I mean, because the RAC was, at the birth of automobiles here in Britain. I mean, the club really has a rich history that is intertwined intimately with racing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, second oldest automotive club in the world, founded in 1897. But all the racing that took place at the end of the Victorian era was on public roads, and eventually it got too dangerous. And there were things called the Gordon Bennett Trophy. And our early members of the club decided in 1905 they would create the Tourist Trophy. And this was going to be the first formal, proper motor race. And it took place on the Isle of Man, up in the Irish Sea. And in September 05, and it's run through, and then it's got a tremendous history here at Goodwood, because through the 50s and early 60s it was for sports racing and GT cars. Sterling Moss scored some of his most famous and iconic victories in the dark blue short wheelbase Ferrari, one of which is here on display this weekend. So, and now the TT celebration recalls those iconic 60s days of E-Types versus Cobras versus Ferraris, and it's a battle royale.
Really?
That's a must-see, Kirby, and that's going to be happening today and tomorrow for the final, 3 p.m. tomorrow. So it's traditionally one of the best races here that always survived here in the Revival.
What do you think it is that attracts people to racing vintage cars? I mean, all the drivers here could be racing something modern, right? I mean, it's probably even more expensive to be racing the vintage automobiles, given the work to restore them and maintain them. But there's something about them, and especially of the vehicles of this era, that just draws people to this event and to vintage auto racing?
I think first of all, it's the beauty of the cars, and then it's the history, isn't it? It's the heritage.
It's the history. The cars have a soul. I personally say historic cars has got a soul. They're very different. It's beautiful to look at the grade. There's different colors, different styles, different types, and I think that makes it very, very attractive to all of us.
And when you sit in your Cooper Jaguar, you think of all the famous racing drivers that sat there before, and you get a tingle in your spine, because it's something quite special. I think we always say you're only the custodian of these cars. They'll outlast us all. And
I agree.
It's that sort of special feel that you're continuing the history.
Yeah.
That's very much the crafts as we know it. To restore them, it takes a lot of qualified people to do it. They had to often make things from scratch. There's nothing out there that to sometimes even in a book to make it up. You have to actually research it. So that's the side of this. All of Goodwood is very special as well, not only in its vintage clothing, but also in the actual craft of restoring cars.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And one of the things, of course, I love most about Goodwood is it's not just a car show where you can go and appreciate these beautiful vehicles just in their physical form, but you can actually see them pushed to the nines on the track as they had been done originally.
Yes, and especially here in Goodwood, the people really, all of us, I think, we always say we take it easy. We never do. We really do race, and we're very competitive.
That's what we say before we go out on track.
Yeah, take it
easy.
easy.
And the moment you turn right just down there, you cease to lie and you get on it.
We all try hard, because of course, to be in Goodwood is a huge privilege, first of all, and it's a privilege to race these cars, be in these cars, and to win here, being on podium, it's something all of us want to do. So we do race them hard in the end.
Kat's been on the podium, so she knows what it feels like.
Only once, so I was lucky enough, yes.
Well, we've got another race headed out right now. So, Katerina, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Such an honor.
Yeah,
Ben,
thank you.
Pleasure. And best of luck this weekend to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What another beautiful day. It's day 3 here at Goodwood. This is the final day. Best of luck. We look forward to seeing you on the podium.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to get into my Curious Blue uniform and get in the race car and do the business for you.
We're very keen. You talked about, this is about looking back. In a way, for me, it's about looking forward. It's about trying to take the best of vintage, the best of the past, and then use that to kind of look forward in a really positive way.
One car fell out, another car caught on fire. I think we had 1 or 2 cars run into the barrier. I mean, it was a real back and forth race.
That's the revival. It happens every year. It's passionate driving, passionate cars, and beautiful people that are here, and that's what's special about the revival.